We are Fortnite gamers, mobile players, paywall haters, entertainers, hot as lasers. Tell your neighbor, do a favor, you should subscribe, and you'll see more. Knightlightning, he's not lightning, so enlightening, not so frightening. Hit like, and you'll see more. Who farted? He's who farted, not faint-hearted, nor outsmarted. Let's get started.
Welcome to Fortnite Gamers. We are going to be discussing pretty dark topics today. Cheating, player bans, scandal, and I have with me a special guest, Maelstrom, who's actually, in my opinion, pretty important in the DSA community in general. A gentleman who has his own YouTube channel and is kind of an advocate actually for the game. So, Maelstrom, give us a little bit about yourself before we jump right into this topic.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to dive into these issues. Not always easy to talk about, but important. So yeah, I'm Maelstrom. I started playing on April 1st, so not a beta player. I really enjoy the game. I actually got it because of my kids. I've got two young boys, and they're into Disney and everything else. And now, of course, I'm the one that plays it like a madman, and they're just very casual, but they're always excited when new characters come out, and they're making me feel bad though. With Legendary Mickey, they're asking, "Hey, Dad, did you get Mickey yet?" And I'm like, "No, son, I don't even have Donald unlocked." So it's good fun. They can get involved, and so that's how I started playing, and I really enjoy like the theory behind putting together different teams and compositions and that type of strategy. But I've, for whatever reason, gotten kind of involved with the community on the official Discord and through all the different clubs. So that tends to find me in some of these topics, I guess.
Yeah, I would say you are one of the best Disney trolls as well, because you trolled me pretty good the other day. I gotta admit.
Well, I need to mix up hyper serious, dark content with a little bit of levity, anyways, and dad jokes. I have to. So
Yes. Break down for me, generally speaking, this scandal that's going on. How are people cheating? We know people are being banned in game. Littlefinger actually messaged me the other day that he caught two people cheating and they are banned off his Sorcerer's tournament. Of course, he messaged me this morning. They might actually be back, which is a whole other thing we'll get into.
Yes.
So, what is the cheating that's going on?
Yeah, and to be clear, there's a number of different scams and scandals and things like that are going on. But the one that we'll spend probably a majority of the time talking about is one that's unfortunately, I feel like, most of the way wrapped up at this point. But hasn't been talked about except for a few select servers. And, it actually goes back to, I think, August, even before then, July, where the first iteration of the scandal was relating to Tapjoy. So there was a couple players that positioned themselves as though they either were employees of Tapjoy or they were connected to Tapjoy in some way or another. And they found a way to essentially spoof that actions were done through Tapjoy to get gems illicitly. Now, what was interesting about this scam was, I think, it was easy for people to fall for it. It seemed legitimate in some regards. And con artists, their whole living is made tricking people. I mean, that's what they do. They are convincing. That's the whole reason they position themselves as such. But with this scandal, unfortunately, Glue found out about it. And I say unfortunately, not because somebody told them, but because they decided to not take any action. So there was a client update on the software.
Not at all.
No, not at all.
Wow.
And like all good stories, The same characters from early on, and this is the prologue. We'll come back a little bit later. So a couple of the individuals, of course, they had almost an unlimited supply of gems they could get. So they built up their accounts, pretty substantially. We're talking 300, 400,000 summoner scores.
Wow.
So with scores like that, they were able to, in conjunction with having really strong rosters, having very positive personalities with the intention of getting into some top clubs. And the thinking was, well, we'll get into a top club. We will achieve legitimacy there, and we will do our side business while we're there. Everybody will win, right? At least everybody connected to them. Now, what's unfortunate is, so Glue found out about the Tapjoy issue. And rather than banning any of the players involved, buyers or sellers, they just decided they would, which is a good thing, they would fix the problem. Hey, that's great. That way the exploit couldn't continue. So whenever the client update came out that included Baymax, I think it was version 13, if I remember correctly. This came out in August, and it effectively closed the loophole that they were using to generate these free gems.
I see.
Which is good. Now, these two players in particular, they weren't punished at all by Glue. They were, however, punished by their club. So at the time, they were in Frontierland, which is the top club in the game. When Frontierland's leadership found out what was going on, they took immediate action. They kicked the players out of the club. And what was very helpful was they alerted all of the top clubs to what was going on. So they said, hey, there's these folks. You need to watch out for them. Here's what we found out. We've reported it to Glue. They're going to look for another top club. Yeah. And so,
that's pretty responsible.
It is. And, I'll say that they didn't need to do that at all. But there was a few folks there, including, I'll give a really big shout out to Danny Mendoza. He did a lot of work trying to curb this cheating, and for a lot of good reason. Clearly they're the top club in the game. It would have been easy for them just to milk that resource and to continue to expand their lead, but they didn't do that. They wanted to do it the right way, and they understood. Obviously, Frontierland and many other clubs have some pretty heavy spenders, and it's kind of a slap in the face when you have somebody putting down their hard-earned money on these products and gems and things like that, and then you have somebody that can just scam the system and kind of get away with that. So
right now, let me ask you just for a second. What's the club's incentive for having someone who? Oh, let me ask it a different way. Is the only incentive for a club to pull these people in or have them in your club initially is to just do better things like raids and beat game modes and have bragging rights by being like the top two clubs or so?
Sure. I mean, there's that element of it, certainly, being able to access all the content, being able to have stronger teams, because it wasn't just those two members. You have to figure if they are perpetrating this scam and circumventing actual purchases, they're picking and choosing that who their customers are, because people will pay them a small amount and they will generate these gems.
Right. You sent me this image. Is essentially kind of representative of what was going on?
Well, this is part two. So this is after after the Tapjoy scandal happened. So the two bad actors were kicked out of the top club. They were reported to Glue. Glue did nothing, literally nothing, other than patch the loophole, that's an important part of it. Don't get me wrong. But you would have expected something else. So the two bad actors, again, very charming. There's a lot of people in the community that legitimately like them and feel close to them, that they're friends. Because again, their total method of operation, just like anyone that's trying to pull off a scam, is to be liked, right? I mean, you want to like the person.
Yeah,
So
you do social engineering. You spend
right,
maybe several months getting to know
right,
someone. This is like kind of classic online dating site ripoff scams where, hey, Maelstrom, you're not in real life, but hey, lonely Maelstrom,
yeah,
you're so alone, you're looking for companionship. I'm
mhm,
this pretty person on the other end, and I might
right,
spend several months getting to know you and telling you I love you with all my heart. And that's
right,
when I get into my car accident. And that's when I
yeah.
have, I need my emergency operation to save my life.
Yeah, and I know that there were a number of folks that shared, very intimate details about their life with them. And, I don't think every bad actor is all bad, right? I mean, I think there's some element of truth there, that there were some of these relationships, but it was all born out of this scam. So, when the first scam was ended, and again, nothing happened except Frontierland kicked them out. They let all the top clubs know. This was in August. Unfortunately, these two gentlemen then went to try to find another top club, and they ended up going to the Disney Titans. Now, the
Wow.
Titans leadership was informed that these two folks had done some bad things, and they still allowed them into the club with the sort of provision that, hey, no more of that, right? We're going to let you in, but you can't continue to do anything bad, and if you do, we'll remove you. That was their decision to let them in, and they had thought at that point that the scam was closed off, that there really was no way to continue it. So the risk was gone.
I see.
Lo and behold,
But just to stop you there for a second.
yeah,
So even though I know, see, this right away is kind of controversial already
yeah,
because
agree,
even though I don't think you could cheat anymore. And again, we're not saying everybody in Titans knew what was going on. At least,
right,
I mean, I don't know these stories in depth as you do, obviously, but you for a fact you're dealing with a hyperinflated roster
mm,
when you're pulling someone into the club, knowing that maybe, like you said, they got 300,000 gems just by hacking, essentially.
right, yeah. I mean, there, and I understand the pressures that exist, and I had extensive conversations with both Ludgate and Danny about this, and I think they both are willing and have freely admitted that maybe we shouldn't have given them a second chance. And with hindsight, now we see maybe that was an error, which I appreciate. The the pressures on them, though, I certainly understand. They were the first sort of big club, right? I know I would always get really excited whenever I would face one of them in PvP, and I would get totally wiped out early on, and it
Of
was
course.
like, it was neat. But as time progressed, and as the global launch players started to close the gap a little bit with the beta players, and became more competitive, I understand pressures to try to compete. But I think, like you said, you've got to be very careful on how you're going to do that, and perhaps that led them to be maybe a little bit more generous for the second chance of, hey, there's these two guys, they're really nice, they're admitting that they did something wrong. And also, I think it does bear mentioning here. It's easy to say, well, gosh, you just shouldn't have let them in. You knew what they did. But Glue knew what they did and did
Right.
nothing.
Right. And
So
the
there's a
onus is
very
not on the club to be, in a way, more responsible than the
right.
company from which this game comes. So,
Totally agree with that. And, you know, personally, I would have made the decision to say, no, you know, don't join. I know what you just did. I'm not okay with that. And besides, you know, I don't want to put my club at risk introducing that element in, right? But I totally understand the argument that, well, Glue looked at it. They decided no punishment was necessary. So for all intents and purposes, you know, time served. So why not let these people in? So I understand that argument. I do. It's not the decision I personally would have made, or I think our clubs would have made, but they did, and I understand it because again, at the end of the day, Glue should have done something, and they chose not to. And also, they chose not to even really disclose what had happened. And I understand, you know, if there's a security loophole in anything, you don't want to tell everybody about it until it's fixed. I understand.
You kind of, that's part of the fine print for one of the other updates, right?
Right. But it's sort of, you know, you're not going to go tell everybody that the bank vault door can't really lock until you get it fixed and say, hey, you know, we have this issue.
That makes sense.
But unfortunately, they didn't really say anything about anything, which is pretty typical. So, you know, that was phase one of really the big scam, which, you know, I don't think there were that many people involved. There were some, certainly, but it wasn't as widespread, and I don't think it was as abused as the second part of it, which frankly for me, the second part of all this is really what frustrates me the most, I think.
That's where this thing comes in, right?
Correct. So at this point,
we did redact
yeah,
all of the names on this.
yeah, and thank you for that. And I will say that although this information is out there unredacted, you know, that's the purpose of this conversation isn't to, you know, condemn specific people. I think it's more of a discussion and awareness of what's happened, because at the end of the day, it's up to Glue to do things a little bit differently and to ensure a safe and fair environment to play, where I think they've failed pretty miserably. So now the second part, chapter 2 of this, features the very same people. So the two people that were caught cheating and helping others cheat, where nothing was done, they are now in another top club. They are still charming and friendly and making new friends. And they figure out some other ways to cheat. Wow. And that's the thing that I think is important here, right? I mean, it's a question of character. It isn't a question of, is there a security patch that closed something and that's going to prevent somebody from doing something bad. It's, if you've got somebody that's willing to do this, there's no reason to think that they're not going to be willing to pursue other methods to do this. And they certainly did. Now, for me, this gets a little bit more dicey. There's a couple of approaches on how this can and has played out. And I will say too, you know, this certainly is not a DSA or Glue specific problem. I mean, this is going on in many mobile games. There's a lot of issues. Anytime there's money to be made and there's transactions and things like that, there's room for exploitation and fraud.
Yeah, you're talking about fraud, money laundering, you know, right. Financial institutions have the Bank Secrecy Act, anti-money laundering regulations. So this actually ties into all of that net, like you are talking about. This is real world stuff too. This is not just inside of a game that has Mickey Mouse in it now.
Correct. This isn't just a Mickey Mouse thing, figuratively and literally. It goes beyond just, hey, I got some virtual currency for free or for cheap. And hey, you know, Glue, forget them anyways because they're jerks sometimes and they don't consider the player base. So they get what they get, right?
Right.
It goes beyond that. And by the way, I think that mentality is flawed anyways. But it goes beyond that into real world issues. And, you mentioned money laundering and things like that. With this specific scam, there's still a little bit of fuzziness around some of the methods, but some of the known methods, beyond just spoofing things and sort of tricking the system into thinking a purchase was made, is payments fraud, right?
Okay.
So basically the way it works is I can say, hey, you know what? I want to figure out a way to take money that I've gotten from other sources that is not legitimate and work it into the financial system in a way that it becomes hard to track. And then at the end of the day, I've got money that you can't track back to an illicit activity as easily. It's basic, purpose of money laundering. Here, the
placement,
way
integration, and
that,
the rest.
yep, layering, yep. So basically here the way it works is the thought process, and you have up there a price sheet, right? And that's only part one of the price sheet, by the way. It does scale even higher, but just
What's
using this
the
as an
higher end of that scale? I'm just curious.
Yeah, $700 for I think 350,000 gems.
Oh my God!
Yeah, and if you think what that would actually get you,
Wow, that's
what's
insanity.
7 times 16,000? So you're getting basically you're buying gems for 30% of what they cost.
That's exactly what I was going to bring up, because like $100 normally in this best value in the game gets you 15,700.
Best value, yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
this $100 gives you 45,000.
Right. Yeah. So now you just look at that, and on the face of it, it seems strange, right? And this is why a lot of people didn't believe what was going on, or they thought there must be some sort of legitimate thing. I look at that and I think, how on earth is somebody making money on that other than glue, right? And glue's not lowering their prices. They're not going to compete with themselves. Why would they do that? So whoever's offering this, how is this a profitable endeavor? And the simple answer is it's not designed to be profitable. So effectively what you do, or hypothetically what you could do in this situation is, let's say you steal a bunch of credit card information, or you buy stolen credit card information from, we hear about the data breaches and hacks that occur.
Sure.
Equifax a few years ago, for instance, I think everybody has probably gotten some sort of notice that somewhere they used their card was breached, right? So if I have a whole bunch of card information, what I can do is say, all right, well, I can't buy a TV with a stolen card and have it delivered to my house. They're going to track that, right?
Yes.
But what I could do is I could say, hey, how about this? You send me, we'll say $175 through PayPal, and give me your login information to your DSA account. And what I'll do is I'll sign in as you, and I'll do my thing. And then whenever you sign in, you're going to have 75,000 more gems. Isn't this wonderful? Great situation for everybody.
Right. So as an example, let's say I wanted to inflate my account. I would say, give Maelstrom my login credentials. You would take a credit card stolen by, say, Who Farted of our channel.
Definitely from him, yes.
Yeah, definitely from him. And rip them off. And look, banks in real life, you have 60 days after your statement. This is Regulation E, in order to dispute transactions. So you have your statement, and then 60 days afterwards, you could do disputes. And that's what happens in real life, what we call chargebacks. And there's a reason they give you that big window of time, is that even in the digital age, it takes a while for sometimes people to figure this stuff out, especially if you're just ripping off. Let's say you have 100 different credit cards, taking $10 here, $20 there, and not, taking $1,000 off of just one. So it makes it harder for people to catch errors.
Yeah. And, again, some skeptical folks would say, okay, well, let's follow that example. No big deal, right? All that ends up happening is whoever's card was taken, they'll dispute the transaction, they'll get their money back, and Visa or MasterCard, whatever. They're multi-billion-dollar companies. Who cares, right? Again, I don't subscribe to that view. Obviously, it's wrong. But it goes, again, beyond that, because most often, and I think you know this from some of your background as well, most often when you receive proceeds from money laundering, they're used to further other crimes. It's not just that's not necessarily the end of it. And again, great credit to Danny Mendoza and some others as well, who really helped to unravel some of this issue, and to the point where it wasn't necessarily a U.S. based situation. We're dealing with multiple different countries and entities, and things like that. Now, there's other scams as well that are more akin to, well, hey, we just got one over on Glue, and they should fix their systems and they wouldn't lose money. There's plenty of those that can do similar things to this, but that's not the only thing that happens. And here, so there were, there were players that really used this quote unquote system, even to the extent of, I know for a fact, one player getting over 1 million gems through this method.
Wow.
And
1 million
that's
gems.
Obviously a little bit frustrating, right?
I'm trying to imagine what you wouldn't be able to get with 1 million gems.